Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see you all again.
Hello,
Hi, Dr. Alex. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Oh, good. So today, um, we are going to talk about asthma.
Yes.
And very specifically, you had said springtime. Was there a reason that you were thinking, or is it just because it is springtime?
Well, because asthma has hundreds of remedies, and I narrow it down thinking about asthma that is aggravated in spring.
Okay.
So we'll talk mainly about these remedies because are the remedies where the asthma gets really aggravated during
And it's
spring.
that time of year, which is why we've got flowers and cherry trees and stuff on here. So, walk us through a little bit about asthma, Dr. Alex.
So asthma is quite a wide definition, but is mainly characterized by breathlessness, where people cannot breathe, and they have a difficulty. Usually, most commonly, is actually on the expiration, although they might. When they have an acute attack, that the air doesn't get into their lungs and they might wheeze more on the inhalation. But if we look at it clinically, the bronchi are dilated, and from the symbolic meaning, I mean, basically, when somebody is born, the first thing you do is you inhale, and you start, when you cut the umbilical cord, you're no longer getting oxygen from the mom, but there is an hypoxia, so there is a lowering once the umbilical cord is cut, a lowering of the oxygen in the lungs, and that's what it triggers the babies to start breathing through their own lungs. And so when you breathe in is when you take in something that is given to you, and when you breathe out is you give out something. And there is an imbalance in the system with asthma, where the giving out is not functioning properly.
Mhm.
So people get this sense of suffocation because the exhalation is not happening normally, and people cannot let go in order to receive again.
Right, right. And that's the sensation of kind of a swelling or a blockage in the airways.
Yes. And sometimes the asthma might come, mucus might be present or might not be present. And very often you have a cough accompanying it. Usually it affects children, but it can be as well appearing later on in adulthood.
Mhm. So there are a lot of different causes that can bring asthma into your field. And allergies is definitely a big one. There are times in our lives where we may have been fine with pollen or something in the environment around us, and then suddenly we develop something like asthma. The pneumoallergens and an infectious situation, a cause, um, nervous, as in you're referring to anxiety nervous.
Yeah.
And
Every
we,
time people get stressed, they will help to trigger an acute attack of asthma.
Okay, and then gastroesophageal reflux, which is GERD,
Yes,
and then of course, tying in with allergies, environmental is also tobacco.
yes. So
So, yeah, talk about allergies.
allergies are the number one cause usually that triggers asthma, and the patients have an atopic constitution mainly. That means that they have an allergic constitution, and these people will have asthma, but usually they will have asthma with eczema or urticaria or hay fever. And many times you see people that suffer from asthma, they will also have food allergies.
Mhm.
So these allergic constitutions run in the family, and you can see that it's passed on from generation to generation.
And
It's
some of that can be environmental. It for me, my asthma kicked up in I want to say my late 30s, early 40s. And my homeopath said, "Do you have feather pillows?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I have feather pillows. I have down comforters. I had feather pillows in the living room." There were all kinds of things. But there was something that triggered it for me. And that kind of exasperated things. It made it worse. And when I took those out of the house, it made things a little easier. And then, of course, finding the right remedy made a big difference. But it absolutely can be constitutional through generations. And I've also seen it where it's been induced if a child has eczema or psoriasis or some kind of skin disorder and they suppress it, they may develop the asthma later on in life. So pneumoallergens and food allergies. Um, this time of year where I am, it's pollen central. The car is no longer white. It's officially yellow.
So yes, so allergens, pneumoallergens are allergens that are breathed in. And that can be tree pollen, grass pollen. Usually grass pollen is more seasonal, but it can be as well animal fur, like you were referring as well to the feathers. And it can be molds as well that can trigger the constitutional, the sensitivity, the atopic constitution is there. So the person, and that's where we refer to the genetically inherited sensitivity to allergies. So people might not express it until they are exposed to allergens that triggers that for them.
Mhm.
The food allergies can also trigger asthma, and these, not only the gut, but it affects the lungs as well.
Mhm.
So
It's
wheat, milk,
inflammation.
egg, and nuts there are more, but these usually are the most commonly seen.
Mhm. So the tobacco smoking, having grown up in a household where everybody smoked about 3 packs a day, I pretty much smoked from the day I came home until a little later in life. And like you say here, it can be passive or active, whether they smoke or they are exposed to it in their environment. And then environmental pollution in cities, not necessarily cigarette smoke, but pollution in general when you're in an area that's very congested and there are a lot of vehicles, there are factories in the area, there are things that are giving off emissions.
Yes. Infections are also a big cause of asthma. So people might not have any um, asthmatic symptoms until they get a big infection. in the lungs, or whooping cough, pneumonia, or a big bronchitis, and then they develop asthma. So that's
Mhm.
another trigger.
Some kind of damage done to the lungs, do you think, in that respect?
I think it's more, sometimes, you do an X-ray of the lungs, and after you pass the bronchitis, after you pass the acute stage, it doesn't show anything in the lungs. But that taxed the system so much that
Mhm.
from then onwards, people
There's a
start,
sensitivity
yeah,
or a weakness or what have you.
yeah, exactly. And they, from there onwards, they have asthma attacks.
Mhm.
Um, Another
And
cause, yeah,
mhm. Go ahead.
another cause is stress, anxiety, and that's what is meant by nervous causation, and it can be a big shock, mental, emotional shock. It can be a huge bereavement or
Mhm.
a phobia.
Mhm. A fear.
And that's a fear that comes suddenly. And then from then onwards, every time somebody is very anxious, uh,
Something
that
triggers that emotion in them or
and so it's just the mental
Mhm.
state that triggers the asthmatic condition.
Mhm.
And people say, yeah, over the years, it's so common to hear, oh, my asthma is worse when it's cold, or when I am in a party exposed to tobacco. But if that is not there, if I am overstressed,
Mhm.
that triggers my asthma. And you take the case, and in the clinical history, you find out that there was a big shock, and since then the patient develops asthma. And
Now,
then
the GERD, the gastroesophageal reflux, when you say mainly after induced birth, so when you say induced birth, are you referring to the child that was induced, or are you referring to the mom?
the birth that was induced by an artificial way, not
Hmm.
the birth was not allowed to take progress naturally, and it can be with oxytocin or induced by other means.
Pitocin, yeah, there's a bunch of different things that they use. But what I was curious is the mom the one that experiencing the mom who's giving birth
Yes,
experiencing the
yes,
GERD, and that can also turn into asthma.
yes.
Okay.
Or a very traumatic birth like forceps or cesarean, and
Yeah.
from then onwards they develop asthma.
Fascinating. So we're all very familiar with allopathic treatment. We've seen people carry around the inhalers or the bronchodilators. They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and colors and so on. There are some people that actually use uh, multiple bronchodilators because of the different types of medication depending on the severity of their condition. But some people use them as a preventative as well. And it's something that they have to use every day to ensure that they don't have an asthma attack.
So they think.
Or so they think. Well, it's the way that they know, right, for
Yeah.
allopathic treatment.
Absolutely. If the asthma is triggered mainly by allergens, so anti-allergic medicines or anti-inflammatories are very commonly used.
Mhm.
Um, if it is asthma induced by heartburn or GERD, then acid reflux medication is
Mm.
used. Antibiotics if it is infectious. So every time a child has a viral infection, and children are have, it makes part of growing up, and they have colds all the time. Antibiotics are very commonly used. If it is a case of more mental, emotional, so the
Right, the
nerve,
anxiety piece where you're
the
talking about.
anxiety,
Hmm.
stress, then they put people on sedatives.
Hmm.
And of course, diuretics and heart tonics are for extreme situations when they are in hospital. And this is basically, very, very severe cases
Hmm.
to bring the patient back from the asthma attack,
Hmm. Hmm.
consequences of it.
Yeah, they can be very, very scary to experience, an asthma attack, especially when you get to the point where you cannot take in any more air. So the good news is we have remedies for that. And this is such a great collection, the ones that you've chosen. And the first one is Aralia racemosa. We talk a little bit about this. I haven't had any reason to use this remedy, so I'm not really familiar with it.
So with Aralia, it can actually be many times confused with arsenicum, but the asthma attack usually comes on lying down. So immediately after lying down, the person gets into asthmatic breathing. There is psychologically and understandably a fear of lung disease, and this fear is there all the time and it cannot be shaken off, because you get thousands of people with asthma and they have
There's a
that in.
panic. There's a panic that goes with that. When you can't breathe, there's an absolute panic.
Yes. But then they go to the doctor, they get their inhalers, and they don't think very much about it. And every time they feel that, that they cannot breathe, or for whatever reason, because it's spring, they get on their inhalers and life goes on. With
Mhm.
Aurelia, there is a constant fear, of lung disease.
Oops, sorry.
And this fear cannot be shaken off, they cannot disconnect from this fear. And the asthma is also worse when they are exposed to drafts. Um, and usually with the asthma, there is a dry cough. And the dry cough, like the breathing symptoms,
Mhm.
everything gets worse on lying down. And sometimes it can also appear a little variation, which is they actually lie down and they fall asleep, but it is in the first sleep. After an hour or two, they wake up and they get an asthma attack. And usually this
Interesting.
asthma attack comes about 11 p.m. So if the person goes and falls asleep at around 9:30, 10, at 11, they are up and they have an asthma. And because it's close to midnight, and because it's aggravated by drafts and cold air, sometimes we think about arsenicum when it's actually Aralia that they should be getting. And the wheezing, it's in the inspiration or the expiration, usually worse on the inspiration, the wheezing, but there is almost like a musical note to it. It sounds
Hmm.
almost like music, And
Fascinating.
yeah, and there is a constriction in the chest, which this is very common to many remedies. And the constriction in the chest is usually, a common symptom of asthma. But there is also a sensation that there is a foreign body, something in your throat.
That you just can't clear.
Yeah, and that triggers the cough.
Mhm.
That comes with the asthma.
Perfect. So the next one is Lachesis. And again, asthma being worse in the spring. The constant short and dry cough with wheezing. They get very red in the face and their eyes get really puffy. They almost seem like they're bulging or pressed out. And the cough, of course, probably makes that, even more prominent. I thought it was interesting. Asthma is worse for covering the mouth and nose. So if you're doing this, worse touching the throat, moving the arms. And so all of those I find very interesting. And then it can also be worse after eating or talking. So as they're talking, there's a constriction that's happening more and more. And we see a lot of constriction with snakes, especially around the throat. And Lachesis is known for not wanting anything to be around the throat. No collars, no coats, nothing buttoned up. But the moving the arms, that's a new one for me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it actually gets better by sitting bent forward. So you're leaning forward with just the top half of your body, and
yes,
that
you will see people that need Lachesis during an asthma attack. They are bending forward. They are never sitting upright because that
Okay.
makes it slightly better. And the asthma attacks are very intense, and there is a massive difficulty in breathing, and the attacks can last very long. But what gives it away from me is, and especially now after COVID, people, when they cough, they tend to cover their mouth and throat because,
You
trying
try
to,
not to send it out in the world.
which has nothing to do with it because asthma is not contagious, as we know.
Right.
And you can cough for multiple reasons. But the moment that they do this, the cough and the
It gets
asthma
much worse.
much, much worse.
Yeah, that's
So,
fascinating.
yeah, which is a big characteristic of snakes, as you said, anything around the throat or, that
Covering.
prevents them from breathing freely.
Mhm.
Um, I have a patient a few years ago after COVID that he couldn't wear the mask
Right.
at all,
Yeah. Yep.
because it triggered the asthma attack. So no matter what, he couldn't wear a mask, which
And
is
that
a
that
keynote.
had to be, yeah, that had to be such a challenge for him, because there are some people and some remedies that have this where you're better for covering, where you might pull the sheet up, or you might pull,
Yeah,
either putting the
Rumex,
mask on. Right, exactly. Rumex is really,
one of
really
them.
one of those remedies that you feel better. You can breathe better, and it's almost like a humidity thing. But with the Lachesis, they don't want anything around there.
No, no,
And
absolutely.
then the next remedy is Nux vomica. And I have to wonder, we didn't talk about mind in here, just about the physical piece, but do you see an irritability with this as well, where somebody gets really frustrated and snappish if they have an asthma attack?
Well, the irritability is very common in Nux vomica, but sometimes no. What it gives away the mental part is that this remedy fits perfectly in the nervous triggers.
Hmm.
So every time they get stressed about work, an asthma attack comes on.
Okay.
And Nux vomica is very much work orientated,
Yes.
or you know, um, while they are working, or if they are worried about work, every attempt on work brings an attack of
Some kind
asthma.
of attack, right?
Yeah, it's Nux vomica is very spasmodic remedy, as we know, so the asthma is very spasmodic as well. It can be brought on by anxious dreams. because again, is related to anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, again, a massive keynote of Nux vomica is the asthma is worse when they eat a lot. So when the stomach is full, it can trigger, or if they overeat, it can trigger an asthma attack.
Or
And
if they eat the wrong
actually,
things.
if they can actually burp, they feel better.
Interesting. Very
But the
interesting.
most amazing thing with Nux is that the asthma has a periodicity. It comes on in every spring.
Mm-hmm.
And a characteristic is that with every year that goes by, or with each spring that goes by, the asthma gets worse and worse and worse instead of getting better and
Better.
better. And
Interesting.
in the repertory, which is amazing, is that the asthma comes on the 1st of May. So
Really?
every year, the attack of asthma, and there is
Happens
a
May
rubric for
1st.
that. Yeah, and there is a rubric for that. It's so characteristic.
That's amazing. There's another remedy that does it. I think it's dulcamara is in August. There's something
Yeah,
about August and dulcamara. So yeah.
yeah,
That it's wonderful that we've been able to look at these remedies for such a long time with so much intent and understanding that we've captured all of these specifics about the remedies. And the proving may have happened in December, for all we know, but the case studies are what keep coming back and show us these things that May 1st, you're going to have an asthma attack if you need Nux vomica. So very
yeah.
interesting.
And the other characteristic
Oops.
is that there is a constriction of the chest, as this is very common,
Mm.
all the asthma, but with Nux is usually on the lower part of the thorax. So it's
So
up
it's
here,
not up here. You're not
not
feeling
up
it where
here.
most
Yeah,
times you feel
it-
asthma. This is
yeah,
lower.
it's lower. It's like the bottom ribs where the diaphragm is on, cannot
Okay,
expand.
fantastic. And then the final remedy we're going to talk about today is Allium cepa. And asthmatic breathing with coryza is worse in the spring. So catarrh, coryza, that is where you have inflammation in the sinuses.
Yes, and so it's not a dry asthma. Usually there is a profuse discharge with the asthma. So, and this, if it is in the nose, it is very excoriating.
Mhm.
And if you have lacrimation, it's going to be blunt. But the nose will start, you start seeing the red wings around, and people think it's because they are with discharge and they need to keep on cleaning.
Right.
But it's not the rubbing, it's not the fact that they are cleaning, it's actually the the
Of the
character
fluid that's coming out of your body.
that
Yeah.
it is very excoriating.
Yeah. And I think this was my remedy when I was struggling with this because I would sneeze like crazy when I got up in the morning. And I couldn't stop. I would just sneeze and sneeze and sneeze and sneeze. And then I would have an asthma attack. And, again, got rid of the feather, all of the down and the feather and that sort of thing in the house. It helped. It didn't make it completely go away, but I think it was this remedy that I ended up taking. This was a long time ago. There's a lot of hoarseness, incessant hacking and tickling cough. Like you're constantly wanting to clear your throat, right? Because it drives you crazy. And that could be pollen, that could be a number of different things that trigger it. But that's one of the keynotes for Allium cepa. And then breathing oppressed from pressure in the middle of the chest worse in the evening. That I used to describe it as it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest.
Mm.
Have you
And
ever heard that from a client before?
yeah, or of a weight of a stone and the chest. Again, we can differentiate because Nux is here
Hmm.
while Allium cepa is in the middle,
Yeah, and
Which
it's a
don't
pressure.
differentiate. It's a pressure in the middle of the chest. So very interesting. And if there is a cough with the asthma in Allium cepa, usually the throat, and that's why there is hoarseness as well, is very raw. And
Mm.
actually, the throat hurts so much when they cough that they hold they put their hands on the neck when they cough, trying to make it better. I don't know, it's just an automatic reflex. They cough and the throat hurts so much that they put their hands in the neck while they cough.
Interesting. And funny that they wouldn't be, again, covering the mouth and nose. No, they're going for the throat because that
Yes.
gives them some sense of comfort when they're doing it.
Yeah.
So fantastic collection of remedies. Thank you for sharing these and pulling these together. You did an amazing job. And it's wonderful to know. It's wonderful to know that we have options, that you don't necessarily have to reach for your inhaler. Not saying to throw your inhaler away. We're not encouraging anybody to do that, but
No.
know that you have options, you have alternatives that are not steroids, that are not something that's going to suppress and potentially cause other issues, because some people really struggle with their inhalers. Having steroids every day, it can take its toll on the body. And by using homeopathy, we're stimulating the body to heal itself. We're stimulating the body to clear what's going on. It's recognizing the issue, we're matching that with a remedy that is the symptoms fit the remedy picture of that remedy. And the remedy is coming in and saying, okay, we've got this going on. We're gonna soothe this out, and you're not going to have this issue. That's the beautiful thing about finding the right remedy. And there are times where you can eliminate this. I struggled with asthma for, it might have been a year that it was going on for me. And when I found the right remedy, never came back, never had that issue again. So it's fantastic when that happens.
Indeed.
So we just wanted to remind everybody that on Fridays, we offer acute appointments during our clinic hours, 11 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time to 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. London time. We are now offering 30-minute acute appointments for half price during those hours for anyone that has a new issue that is actually an acute, not a chronic. And you would visit our website, our calendar to book your appointment. And that's homeopathyunited.setmore.com. Thank you, Dr. Alex. It's always wonderful to connect with you, and I so appreciate everything that you share. I learn something new every time we do this, and I look forward to having a healthy spring without any asthma attacks.
Well, that's what we wish
That's our goal.
our members and all our patients.
Yes,
That's our goal.
that's our
It's
goal. Thank you,
to
everyone. Wonderful to see you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Be well. Enjoy the lovely weather.
bye bye.
Bye.